My name is Rebecca Galvin. I'm Executive Director for Cascadia Music here in Twin, Washington. And we're really glad to have you guys here today.
Wes, you've gotten hairier since I last saw you.
You know, it's happening to a lot of peers during this time.
Yeah.
Hey, Wes.
So maybe we could we'll sort of get started with our introductions here, and just a couple of quick housekeeping things. We have one or two more people sneaking in here. Let me back up and say thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday afternoon to be here with us and to be here with Mary and hear what she has to share with us, and to take this time to come together as musicians and artists and really put our heads together and think about how we can bring our skills to the next level, and how we can sort of move forward in this time where it's sort of difficult for everyone, but especially difficult for musicians. Messages, but I want to make sure I say that again. I'm recording this so that we can edit together some of the insights that we gather here, so that we can share with artists who couldn't make it today, and so that we can put this on our website to be a resource for artists who are looking for inspiration during this time. So Mary has over 40 years of experience as a professional artist, coach, promoter.
When I was in college in the mid-'70s, and that caused me to meet musicians, and then those musicians could see that I had a little bit of organizational skills, and so they would say, well, you want to book me or be my manager? I had no idea what any of that meant, but I said sure, and jumped in and learned as I went along. And so in the last 40 years, I've kind of done everything soup to nuts: booking management, recording, helping artists release their recordings, radio promotion, all kinds of marketing, media, just kind of everything there is to do in a musician's life. I've had some experience doing it. I even have a couple of writing credits, but I've just been all over it, because the definition. This is one thing that we often start off with in these workshops, is defining a couple of terms. And one of them is booking agent. And a booking agent, that's the person that gets you the gigs, okay? They negotiate on your behalf with venues and promoters to secure bookings for you. And they write the contract, and they might be so generous as to get you directions to the gig. And that's it. That's the end of their responsibility. Everything else that goes into getting to the gig, publicizing the gig, everything else, that's management, okay? And so some people get mad at their booking agents because they're not doing all these other things. And I have to come and say, well, that's not their job, So don't be mad at your booking agent. But anyways, the things do kind of overlap. And I always say, the booking agent is the person that gets you the gigs, and the manager is the person that does everything else. And if you are lucky enough to be able to afford other professionals, like you can afford to pay a publicist, well, then that's off of the duties of the manager, but it's the manager's job to oversee the publicist and make sure that's all going right. So that's a very quick, and in my life, I had to learn that. I just thought, oh, I'm the manager, I have to do every single thing. And I did. And so that's why I learned so much about it.
Great.
And then I've been participating in music conferences for, 20 years or so. I mean, I think before there was Far West, there was just Folk Alliance. And so I was at some of the early Folk Alliance meetings in South by Southwest and such, and then Far West. And at every meeting that I could attend, I've tried to present these workshops, because musicians constantly ask me questions about how to do this and how to do that. And finally I said, well, why don't we just get all the musicians in a room and we can talk about it all together. And one thing that I found out is that when you have a bunch of musicians in one room, the base of knowledge is incredible. The musicians know way more than I know about how to do every single little thing, because you're all doing it right now. And so my goal when we get together is to kind of host the conversation. I will always tell you any bit of wisdom I think I might have, but mostly what I want you to do is to talk to each other and share your knowledge, because you have a lot. And what you did on your live stream yesterday is going to be way more current than anything I can tell you about what I've learned about live streaming over the years. So that's my intention, is to engage you all together to share what you know, and be generous in what you know. Do not be at all reluctant to ask even the most basic question, because we all start there. And believe me, the most basic question you have is a question that somebody else has. So ask it. Ask it.
New people join us. Nalini, welcome, and Wes, welcome.
Hi, I met Mary at Far West last fall in Woodland Hills, and she helped me for several weeks. I made a checklist of things to do and spent the next year doing them. Glad to be here.
And I really noticed that, Nalini. I noticed it. We had those couple. I think we had a couple of chat sessions, and you did have this. You were so focused on your list, and then months later, I'm watching you on Facebook and other places. I'm like, she's doing all that stuff. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, I was on such a roll. I feel like for the last almost 2 years, I've been on such a roll pursuing my dream of being a musician and taking my songs out of the dusty bins, recording again, performing, all that stuff. And then the pandemic hit, and I was just shocked. I'm retired. I don't, I'm not doing this for a living, but my heart breaks for all of our venues and all of our performers and touring artists. So, but then now all of a sudden the doors opened up to this whole new universe of the online, and I just hosted my third women's song circle online, and I've been going to open mics online and jamming, and we got a co-write done with a friend in Fresno, and then he was driving through LA, so we stopped and we shot a video in 20 minutes. It's very exciting. It's opening up new doors.
With all of the for everybody, for everything that we do, we're being forced into looking at new ways of doing things. And there's going to be some sad things that happen. There's going to be some venues that go away and don't come back. There's going to be some musicians that just throw in the towel. But there's also, we're being forced into this other way of sharing music, and we don't even know what's going to come out of this. But not only music, but all the arts and all kinds of different business endeavors and all sorts of things. I mean, in a way, this is terrible. In another way, I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of excited to see what's going to pop up, because, people don't just roll over and give up. They roll with it, and they make something else happen. And we can't even guess what's going to come out of this. So I'm kind of excited to see what will.
Deb Seymour here. Yeah, it's been fascinating as I mused in my monthly newsletter that I just sent out yesterday to my mailing list. I said 12 weeks ago, I knew nothing. I had never heard of Zoom. I had only done one live cast and someone else ran it all. I knew nothing about internet marketing for musicians. And I'd never tried to make my own music video because, well, Alicia Healy, my producer, she does all that. And now, 12 weeks later, this is my umpteenth Zoom meeting. I've done 7 live casts on Sundays from Facebook, and then I've been working with the Video Leap app on my iPhone. That's a good one, and also just playing around with Final Cut Pro and trying to produce my own music videos. I bought a couple of cheap backdrops from Amazon. A lot to learn about camera angles. For example, this is a lousy camera angle, but I'm being casual today. And I'm finding that there are some ways to get I'm learning about using the Facebook advertising tools because they've always been sitting there and they're very powerful. And I'm actually taking an online course called the Online Musician from the Savvy Musician Academy. That's been amazing so far, all the stuff I've learned, and I'm still processing. So there are some what are they calling it? Corn linings in all this. And I even made a little bit of money from my live streams, not a lot, but then again, I play tips gigs all the time, so it was about the same. So just, it's very interesting.
You know, for all of my, some of you have seen little tips and comments and things that I've made on my own Facebook pages about these live streams. That this is my first, this is my first one. Rebecca and I have practiced a little bit, but you know, this is, you know, I have a lot to say about it without having ever done it. So.
Right. I wonder if we should start getting to folks' questions, because I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to ask at least one question, or sort of be heard before we move on today. So is anyone being brave and wanting to be first? Wes? Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, I'm interested in anybody's thoughts, but Mary's in particular, about what is the value of being sort of quick and visible in times like this, knowing that the thing that's the thing now might not be the thing later, but versus the opportunity to take time to focus on other aspects of craft, which is always the thing that so many self-managed people complain about not having time for. This is less of what's the way and more interested in opinions and discussions about that.
Do you mean kind of like in live streaming, you know, should you just get something up there, or should you really get your technical act together and make it all perfect? Is that the kind of
That's certainly one aspect of it, but it's any way of sort of being visible without a lot of people's main opportunity to be visible, which is actually performing in a room.
Well, I think that with what we've got now, what I would advise anybody is to just start, to jump in there and start, because that's how everybody has been learning how to present themselves online in the best way. You know, I mean, Deb has told me a few times about, you know, ways to practice before you go live. But I do think that you start where you are. You start with what you've got. And after you've done a few live streams, you're going to be looking at that and saying, you know, technically, you know, the vocals are not, you know, coming up the way I'd like them to. What can I do about that? And there's a wealth of information about that, about different kinds of microphones or interfaces. You know, same thing with lighting and stuff like that. And people are afraid. I think people are always afraid that the first thing they put out there is going to be the thing that defines them forever. And if they launch something and it's technically not the greatest, then everyone's going to know them by that crappy live stream they did. And, you know, what I say is do the best you can and just keep going and making it better. It's the only way to learn it. And, you know, I think I don't want people to be afraid to jump in and start, you know. And so as far as being visible, I mean, this is the only way that we really know right now on how to be visible in this time, and learning your platforms and learning how to share things to a wider audience. Does that answer you at all, Wes?
Yeah, I had, and as I said, I'm really interested in the discussion. I think it's helpful for people to hear perspectives other than their peer musician perspectives about it, because while we're inundated with live streams from our peers, the rest of the country is still kind of charmed by artists trying something, and we tend to forget this. Doesn't mean they're watching, but yeah, I was happy to have you speak to that. So thank you.
When using Zoom, are there certain settings that will help make guitars sounds or other accompaniment sounds sound their best? Or should one use something like Team Talk? And are there tutorials for that? Thanks, Gudrun.
Deb, can you speak to that?
Yes. Wes is also speaking to it in chat. The biggest thing in Zoom is to turn on original sound and turn off automatic management. And you will find that in Zoom under your audio settings by the little microphone. At least if you're on a PC screen. I'm on an iPhone today, so it's a little different. There'll be audio settings down by the microphone. What original sound is that means that Zoom is processing the room like it's hearing it and not trying to optimize all the sounds, because Zoom wants to take, as I think Wes just typed, if you have it on automatic settings, Zoom will try and take the loudest sound in the room, and that's going to vary between your voice and your guitar, and emphasize that. And that's what causes that underwater glow, or like your guitar's been plugged into a flange on steroids when it's an acoustic. So making sure that your original sound is on and your automatic settings are off helps. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better.
Wes has added a YouTube link
Good.
for some discussion about settings.
It's a really quick video, and it just walks you through the 3 settings that Deb mentioned. And then on the updates, now you have options on the mobile devices, and that setting is original sound. You want original sound on. Enable original sound is the way that shows up.
Great. Gudrun, does that answer your question? Great. Okay, good.
And then I think Nalini had something to add, or to add questions.
Yeah, I just want to go on to what Wes and you were talking about just do it, right? So for the first 3 weeks after the pandemic, I laid on the floor and cried. I was like, I couldn't even pick up my guitar. And then I got the courage to enter my friend's monthly open mic. Now we're digital, and I had to present a song. So somehow managed to comb my hair and take my cell phone and record one song and stick it into this evening, so I have one little thing. The next time I had better sound, The next time got to be with a larger group. And then last week I took the step of doing my first live stream, and it was only 3 songs. I picked Memorial Day, and I decided I would do a collection of 3 peace songs. And that just had enough of a focus to it, and it wasn't too much to do. And I've had, I think, over 300 views already. And like Mary was saying, it's not that more people are going to be listening to me. It's more like I'm getting better doing it.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out that Nalini is speaking directly into a mic. That's is that a Beta 58? Is that what I'm looking at? Or
yeah, I'm using a direct mic.
So that is that a USB mic, or
it's going through a Focusrite?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What do you call that? Audio
Interface.
Interface, yeah. First time I'm doing that. So I'm plugging my guitar into it, and I'm plugging my microphone into it. I did learn that I have to change my computer audio settings when I do that. But learning the settings, that's what's really valuable about going into other people's open mics and just trying to get yourself anywhere, because every time you do it, you learn a little more.
Right, and you can really hear distinctly the difference between your audio level and it's very, very different than everybody who's speaking just into the mic on their device. So there's
I think it's about 150 or something like that. This and I thought it would be bigger, but it's not much bigger than a pedal.
Are you talking about your interface?
The interface, yeah.
Is it possible to
Is
hold
it the Scarlett one? It's the Scarlett 212, the little one.
Yes.
I have one of those too.
We could type that into the chat if people are interested, but.
Okay, so that guitar is also plugged into that device?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to show you how, doing it together. I can't hear what you hear, but. It sounds okay.
It's nice.
Not all warbly.
Sounds a touch overdriven to me. but it's like
Well,
that's.
I could have been. I don't even have my headset on.
Is your device? Is it something you can hold up to the camera?
Sure.
I know Z wants to see this. So it's
There it is.
big. Okay. And how many inputs does it have?
Just two.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
I have my my guitar is in one, my mic's in another, and then I have a headphone plugged in. There's an overall monitor and gain, and then there's individual controls.
Great. Great. And no matter how many times you ask the question, and I have asked the question a couple of times, I get so many different responses. One is that just get a USB mic and plug it right into the laptop, and other people are saying no, you have to go through, the intermediary device. And other people say the mic and the camera are the best thing on the iPhone. Just use that. Joe, you've got kind of a setup.
Yeah, I'm using a little Zoom camera. It's called Zoom Q8. It's got a microphone set right in it, and it's also a USB interface. So it's kind of everything in one, but it's a little expensive. It cost me about $400 Canadian, which US would be about 300. But it's really great because you pretty well just plug it in and go. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I used to play every Thursday night in my little hometown here of Seashelt. I had a gig at a little Italian restaurant, and since everything closed down, I just started going online, right, on Facebook Live. And what I'm finding is it's a community, right? It's only about, I'm only getting 40, 50 people every week, but we're turning into a little family. It's really fun. And what can I say? It's nothing to be afraid of, I think we're all friends here. Everybody's trying to figure this out, including the people who are listening to our live streams. And it's great. Other than not having any gigs, it's going pretty well.
Community, anyone who's worked with me, anyone who's been with me in the room, at these conferences, it's community is what I always say is, musicians are very solitary people. You guys lead a lonely life. And, and well, it's like you go out and you do this thing and it's highly personal, but you stand on a stage and you do this highly personal thing in front of all these, and the only other people on earth that really know what that's like are other musicians. And so I really am always trying to get community together. Wes and I have been talking a few times about doing some workshops about, musicians and community. Just getting musicians in the room, getting everybody talking, getting everybody sharing information. There's kind of a long-standing tradition of musicians being a little stingy with their information, And I'm always saying, if you have a gig contact, give it to the next one over. They're not going to steal, it's like, if that's your gig, that's your gig.
Yes.
Everybody help everybody out.
I'm with you there, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I also, this is a really weird time. It's been a weird time for musicians for actually quite a long time. Since the bottom dropped out of CD sales, it's been pretty weird, since iTunes. It's been really, really a strange time.
Now, CD Baby even
I know.
factored in.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just feel really lucky to have been working with some very hot musicians during the time where we could go to a festival, pay the band $500 and sell $10,000 worth of merch.
Yeah. Now we're looking at $150 a tip. So.
Right. Yeah. And so, we had to navigate that. And so now we're in a strange kind of period. And I think that, the more musicians can band together, I always say, you know, musicians always complain, there's no scene where I live, you know, there's no gigs, there's nothing to do. And I always say, make the scene.
Yeah, I got to make your own scene.
Yeah.
Can I say something to Wes there?
Yes.
Good to see you, Wes. We met at Far West in Seattle. Anyway, you were asking about how this solitude is affecting your artistic endeavors, right? Like writing. And I'm finding myself, I can spend much more time playing my guitar now, which is really strange thing to say, but I used to spend so much time online booking gigs, trying to get someone like Mary to help me out. Anyway, no, I don't have to do that. I can just spend time writing, and I'm trying to figure out some recording software, which is driving me up the wall. But anyway, there's more time to do the thing we love to do, right? We got so overwhelmed with the business of it all in the past. It's nice to have time to relax. You know?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who, myself included, who are finding it to be a productive time, and I know other people who are finding it to be a really challenging and traumatic time as they process the grief around all the things that we're losing, even as other doors may be opening. And I see a lot of posting of big articles that draw conclusions to support you, but I'm hungry for a lot more peer chatter about it. Really, you know, it's one thing to click a link and say, oh, somebody agrees with my opinion. That's pretty easy to find these days. Over the last dozen years now, my father's been in and out of some unique and weird cancer treatments, and there have been times where I've really disappeared, and then I've come back from that with intention, worried that everybody forgot about me, and it turned out they didn't really know or care about me in the first place, or that people are they're so wrapped up in everything that they're holding, which is a big part of now. Whoever said audiences are training themselves right now too is, I think, really nailed that. But I feel oddly practiced at this right now. Like I have disappeared before and come back and been just as irrelevant as I was when I left, and I can do it again.
Yeah, I've been thinking that too, Wes. I booked 87 gigs. I was so proud of myself. We had a really good season. We were heading into parks, concerts, festivals, and our usual routine, which is at least 3 bookings a week in retirement homes and nursing homes. And now we're getting weekly emails saying this canceled, that canceled. Of course, everything is canceled, virtually everything. And it's hard not to feel like my life is ended. I have spent 30 years establishing contacts with people who I book with, all these people who know me. My reputation is pretty solid. And I think, I'm afraid, I'm willing to accept though, that this may not be over for 2 years. And by that time, I think I'll be totally forgotten. Unless I do something about it.
I won't forget you.
I got a good friend here.
But everybody else will be forgotten too. So everybody else has to work themselves back. So you won't be any worse off than anybody else.
I thought about that, and definitely there will be lots of new people in there booking. There will be new opportunities. There will be lots of new musicians, and I will be 2 years older, and I'm old already.
I have a question and a reaction. You know, to some degree, this venue of live streaming and stuff serves the solo musician, because the bands, you know, are still nervous being around each other.
Yeah.
Although I did see a great, I don't know if y'all like John Schofield and the Majeski, what's his name, Majeski Wood, and those guys. They did a kind of a social distanced video that was really cool. 4 of them in a room, but it was a huge studio, you know. For myself, you know, playing in a band, our band is not getting together anytime soon. So there's a little bit of that solo thing and the every person for themselves thing, which brings me to my question. You know, a few of us on this.
No, George.
But that's why I mentioned
part of a
team
music
talk.
association.
That's why I mentioned team talk. That's supposed to be really good for several people, you know, jamming together.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, Gudrun. That's a
Okay.
good point. There are some technical, you know, solutions to that. But what I'm wondering about, if anybody in your communities, is there some kind of a organization or an association like we have here, Cascadia Music, that is doing, you know, helping to facilitate musicians and music lovers, you know, to get together in this way, or is it sort of everybody doing it on their own?
George, I'll mention that a lot of the people who are on this screen, we belong to an organization called Folk Alliance International. And it's not just folk musicians, it's all kinds of musicians. And there is a West Coast regional called Far West, Folk Alliance Region West. And that's where a lot of us met. And I don't think you have to be a member of the organization to join some of the Facebook groups. But there is like a Far West Facebook discussion group where it's mostly artists, and they are discussing all kinds of, you know, issues that come up around all of this. And I'm sure that there's similar things for jazz musicians and different kinds of musicians. But you know, there are definitely like Facebook groups that are trying to keep everybody together and talking about, you know, all kinds of issues. And then we're doing, you know, stuff like this.
And then I also want to ask, because we're getting close to the end of our time, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask before we wrap up for today, and just let you know that we have the plan to meet again on June 9th at 6 p.m., just like this. And for you folks or for the attendees to determine the topics that we're going to talk about. So I'll ask if there's anyone who hasn't been heard from yet who'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, I have a question. I would like to know what people think about different platforms like Facebook Live or using Zoom. What is you know, Christy and I did we jumped in and it was pretty bad. You know, I just really hated it. It just compressed all the instruments. All you could hear were voices. It was
Painful.
It was yeah, and I've been reluctant to do something that would represent myself like that again. You know, I don't. And so that was Facebook Live. We also actually have a Zoom account. This is our third Zoom meeting today. So, I'm curious about different platforms, and if you do settings different on different platforms. One of the reasons I'm asking this is because if I did a Zoom Live, we have a mailing list, and I can send invitations out to our mailing list. I don't know. I suppose that I could post something on Facebook too, but Facebook has the advantage of having a built-in audience. I mean, I was amazed at how many people in such a short period of time saw that disastrous video. You know, I mean, like bam, like that, a whole bunch of people saw it. Okay, Mary, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Well, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I want to welcome Poco Marshall, who just joined us a little bit late because we didn't get him the link in time. I've known Poco since he was 3 years old, and he is more on the technical. He's been a musician as well, but he does tech work at Cabrillo College. Is that right, Poco? Do I still have that right? Am I up to date with you?
Yeah, that's correct. This is the Cabrillo College Theater virtually behind me. That's my full-time gig. I also work extensively with the local stagehands union. I'm currently the president of our local chapter. So I am a techie, but I got into the industry for my love of live music, specifically the very special interaction between audiences and performers on stage that, live, that doesn't really happen anywhere else. So I remember, Mary as a small child promoting shows in Santa Cruz where I grew up. And
I'm pretty sure you mean when you were a small child, but I was also fairly much a small child when I started this.
Yeah, I think you were only like 2 years older than me, probably, when I was 3 and you were putting on shows. But anyways, thank you, Mary. I'm glad you're doing this. I just wanted to drop in and, at least maybe, give some answers from a technical perspective. I mean, what I would say personally, Steve, as far as that, I think probably YouTube Live is your best bet because, they are a platform specifically dedicated to music. So I'm going to say on the onset that I have not dove too deeply into this, and I probably will in the upcoming future because I basically manage 3 performing arts spaces at the college. And so we're going to be looking into this upcoming semester how we're going to be presenting live events and whether we can do live or simulcast and stuff like that. But I know that Zoom has an option to communicate between select participants and then rebroadcast that to another platform. So that could be an option. And I would also say that, doing all of your mixing, into the background on probably like a digital mixer and then piping it into the system is also probably your best bet. And, digital mixers are really cheap these days. Specifically, I would recommend the Allen and Heath QL consoles. There, you can get a 16-channel mixer for like $1,500. That's really, really good. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I have a digital mixer. One thing that I tried was I have a cheap Behringer mixer that has a USB port on it.
Steve, I wanted to say to
I like how that worked.
everybody that when you're doing Facebook Live, you have the option to set the privacy settings to only me. So I really recommend that for everybody when you're either you're testing out new equipment or you're not that familiar with it. Go ahead and go into Facebook Live, change the privacy setting to only me, and then you are the only one who can see that. And then at the end of it, you save it and then you can review it and see how you like it, and just keep doing that until you get something that you want to share. And that's probably, I think you were saying that, Poco, with YouTube Live, you probably also can adjust those settings. And I am not that well versed on Instagram, but they probably, Wes, you're a little bit more active on Instagram, aren't you?
I'm delighted to hear you think that. That means that my plans to be visible without doing
You're fooling us.
are working. I've never done an Instagram live thing. For my answer to this stuff is actually, or my observations are more about demographics than the tech. The tech seems to be something that a code you can crack if you're willing to put the time into it and invest in some of the outboard gear. What I'm noticing is that Instagram audience is much younger. Instagram live audience.
Yes.
Facebook audience is a particular thing. YouTube Live is sort of a particular thing. And with some of the organizations I work with, I'm fighting all the time about, do we try to go to one place and create an experience there or blast it out? Vimeo, it offers probably the cleanest experience, but that's a paid account. That's something you use to embed in different places. That's what a lot of yoga studios and dance studios are using. It's what Northwest Folklife just used for their attempt at a virtual festival. I think there's pros and cons to all of them. So thanks for thinking I know what I'm talking about, Mary. That means a lot to me.
I'd like to jump in for a second here, Steve and Christine and everybody. The thing is, one of the most important things I've been learning from the Savvy Musician Academy and the online musicians taught by Lieberman Henry is you need, I'm with Wes, you need to go where your audience is. If you have a huge YouTube audience, great. I don't have a huge Instagram audience, but my audience is all over Facebook. So that's where I'm doing my live streams and then saving them. I can post them to video later. But, and the thing that's been beautiful about Facebook is that people who live across the country, friends, family, friends in Spokane, have been coming to my shows regularly that they can't live. So there's this whole other opportunity to find your niche and figure out where your audiences is, not just local to you, but all over the country or all over the world. So it's worth thinking about what's more important. The technical sound is not important, but where is your audience? And like you observed, Steve, you had Facebook people all with you and supporting you. And like Wes said, if you can crack that, the sound thing, you'll be able to test. I'd also like to speak to the privacy setting, Mary, just for a second, to be absolutely clear. If you are broadcasting from a public music page, you cannot do an only me setting. You can only do a private test from your personal page, and that's where you do your testing.
Okay, so you mean not your business fan
Not
page?
your business page. Your business page is by default set to public. You cannot make that personal. So make sure when you're doing your live book, your Facebook stream, pre-testing, to do it to yourself from your personal page first. And if it sounds good there, it'll sound good on the public page. But then you do your public concert from the public page. I just think that's an important distinction.
Deb, can I ask you, when you do your Facebook Live, how are you able to download the video or store the video? I've had a real problem with that.
Okay, so once it's, after you've done your Facebook Live, great question, it'll say either save video and share it. At the very end, when the video goes off, it says end Facebook Live, you click end. And then it goes it goes save or discard. You want to save it, and then you want to hit share. And the save button saves it, the video. The share button posts it.
So the save is in MP4?
No, it doesn't save. It's just saving it within the Facebook universe.
But that's what I was, but how do I get it out of there so I can post it?
Okay. Good question. That's where I was going next. Okay, once you've done those first two things, you go and so after it's posted after the video is posted onto your Facebook page, you go in as a viewer, or you can do it from inside your account. You click on you find the video, you click on the video, and then, so you open up the video in its separate window. You go up to the upper right, usually where you have the delete photos thing. You will click those little three dots, and it'll have an option to delete or download the video. And from there, it downloads as an MP4 into your download file.
I've never found that download button.
Okay, well, maybe I can, I know we're connected on Facebook. If I could PM you and maybe get your email or something, I can send you a screenshot. I would be more than willing to do that.
That would be great.
I had to have someone tell me how to do it. It's actually more simple than I'm explaining it. So let's connect on that one, and anyone else. But thanks. You can. It's a good idea to save all those performances. I've got a dedicated folder. It says sequestered songs, or SQ, number 1, number 2, and then the date that I did it.
That's it. That brings up another great point. If anyone would like, to connect with people in this meeting, feel free to put your Facebook address or your email address or contact info that you'd like in the chat settings, so you can contact each other with questions, or you can connect on Facebook or connect about technical things. You can connect with us by our website, cascadiamusic.org. And we're coming close to the end of our time, so I just want to say again, you're welcome to stay for a little bit if you have some more questions, if you want to chat. But we know your time is, kind of valuable. You might be barbecuing things like Joe, or you might have kids busting down the door to get in and talk to you. So does anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask? Anyone who hasn't been heard yet, who has a question they'd like to ask before we start to let people go if they'd like to go?
And I will stay here as long as anybody wants to talk. And Wes, I want to know, this might be a little personal, but I want to know how you're doing.
I'm all right. Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm thinking about you thinking you got a double whammy. Not only are all your gigs gone, but you're also a sports writer, right?
I got no baseball either. Yeah, it's
oh my God.
Yeah, you and Chuck Brodsky.
Yeah, well, this thing's bigger than me. I've been pretty moved by what I've seen in community, and I've been pretty isolated other times too.
Like you're one of the guys that I feel like, you work really well within the Seattle musician community. You have lots of friends, and you have lots of people that you collaborate with, and you do these great collaborative shows with people, and all that's kicked out from under you.
Yeah, it is. And actually, I'll share one thing that the Bushwick Book Club Seattle did, because I learned something really useful from it that wasn't what I anticipated. When we took our April show online, and I reached out to the 10 performers who were all going to write a song inspired by the same book and perform at that show, I asked them if they'd be willing to record videos, and everyone was. And they sent their videos in, and I was blown away by the effort and creativity that came in, not just with the approach to the writing, but the approach to shooting videos. And a lot of these people didn't have a lot of experience. They were just happy for a project. And we were really, really moved by that. And we realized that the show we were putting together was not going to be a live show substitute. It was really more of a video podcast and like a place, a sort of moment in time in community. And I think it was much stronger that way. And then we edited it that way. And I felt like I learned that even though, I have a lot of these skills that I try to keep sharp, I'm not able to do in the same interactive way. Myself and the organizations I work with can still be relevant right now. And we had a really nice and engaged audience for that. And it, so I have to hold that along. I mean, I mentioned grief earlier, and I'm really present to it. Like a lot of the things that I have worked the hardest on, like for instance, not investing in home recording gear because I want to pay people to do that and spend time on my own playing and writing. Now I'm way behind the at-home tech front. I have the know-how, but not the gear. And I stand by that choice, but that's an adjustment now. So, some days I get after it, and some days, I'm a little slower. I'm following the 1997 Mariners season one day at a time, just to have something to do. I know how it ends, but so it goes.
But you're a really great example of, when I say you got to make your own scene. And, you have created some things or been participating in some very, very creative endeavors that are not just, where's my next gig? So there's a few people on this screen that have no idea what Bushwick is. Can you give us a very short description of Bushwick?
Yeah, the Bushwick Book Club Seattle is, the premise is original music inspired by books. So once a month, there's a live show where all the performers, and it's scheduled and curated in advance. Everybody's read the same book, and it's advertised, this is original music inspired by Pride and Prejudice or The Wizard of Oz. And 10 songwriters show up and offer their response, and the audience shows up to hear it. And it's really interactive. It works as one performance, one evening, because there's the common source material. And, it's a great chance for songwriters to engage in a conversation bigger than just themselves.
Yeah, so everyone can do something like that.
That sounds so cool. And you can promote it because each book is going to have a different audience.
Yeah, I mean, a large part, as this grows, we're wrapping up our 10th season. Wow. As we really understand what we're doing, a lot goes into picking the season. What books are the right combination of diverse and engaging and relevant that also are known and will bring an audience? And we fight about that a lot.
And so that's going to be really interesting for you, because what we're going through now is going to completely inform what books you're choosing in the future.
Yeah, we've all but vetoed an entire pandemic season to start up in the fall, but it will. We will.
Need more time.
Yeah, there will be. Well, we did the best pandemic book of all time, in my opinion, Station 11, 3 seasons ago. So, but we will reference our times.
Yeah. Yeah. So people can find. What's the official title?
Oh, the Bushwick Book Club Seattle. I just put the link in the chat. And Eleni, I know you're down in California. There's a chapter in Santa Barbara that does this. And we're
Have they been going online?
I believe so. Their shows are much more Zoom sort of songwriter circle than ours. Each chapter, we were the second one after Bushwick Brooklyn, and we're the only one that's become a 501c nonprofit and started an education program, and going big. But check out Santa Barbara. There's some good folk involved and some really neat conversations and songwriting that happens there.
It's a great idea. There's so many wonderful book clubs, you know.
Yeah, and so
Really.
I encourage everybody to get the wheels turning, you know, shake out the sheets. There's more to life than just going and playing the next coffee house. You know, it's like, what can you think of, especially in community with other artists? It's not all just musicians, you know. There's all kinds of different art forms. What can you create out of nothing that would get you in community with other people in your community, that you can present something that's different than the regular thing? That, because, you know, like, you know, as a promoter, as a media person, oh my God, the challenge of going to somebody and saying, having more to say than, I have a really good artist and they have a new CD out. How many times, you know, can you use the word unique, you know, or whatever it is? And so you gotta, you want to create, you guys are creative. You're really creative. Create something that gets you really, really, really worked up and engages other artists, and will be something in your community that hasn't existed before, and that everyone goes, whoa, that's cool. Steve.
I started producing a poetry radio show. There's some friends of ours started a little low power radio station, and I started sending them songs first, and they started just playing anything that I sent them, and then I just got this idea. They needed content, so I've been doing that. As a matter of fact, one of the poets that we interviewed is from BC. And we met her. We ran a showcase, a PGS room in New Orleans, and she recited a poem while she was doing her showcase. And I said, well, hey, I'm doing this radio show, and so I got in contact with her. So she did a half hour, but it's been really great. I have a friend who does the interviews, and I just record the Zoom and edit that and do that, and I also help him find poets, and David and I both write poetry, so sometimes we read our own poetry, but that's been a really good thing. I've really enjoyed that. It's gotten me more engaged in writing poetry. But another thing is that now that I'm no longer so much having to work on guitar parts for one of our ensembles or for performance, I've found that I have a number of fine instruments laying around the house, and I've been enjoying them a lot more, you know, because it's not work anymore. It's like I pick up the guitar and I don't have something that I have to work on. I can just play whatever the hell I want to play. Oh, that was one of the things I did. Was I did an acoustic finger-picked theme song for the poetry show. I've been doing other things. Haven't just been sitting on my hands going, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah, that is really good.
And I've been taking voice lessons again. I mean, I've been doing some online voice lessons via Skype. That I've been meaning to take vocal lessons again. I've been like Steve. I've been taking the time to learn cover songs that I felt like I never had time to do before, which is also instructive. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
no interruption. I was thinking, what's the thing that Phil does? Phil Ward, the thing with the art, and what's the name of that?
He calls that Now See Here, with here spelled H-E-A-R, which is original music, visual art inspired by music, and then music inspired by the art, and it's now a cycle. I actually. I pulled Phil into the April Bushwick show because I figured I could do my quiz bit with anybody. He was one of my contestants. He lost bitterly, but well, he wasn't bitter, but it was really lovely to share, to bring him in and share that project with the Bushwick audience, and that, you know, art inspiring art pipeline is a great way to, you know, shake yourself out of your own blocks if you have them.
Yeah, it's like it's this cyclical thing. So artists like sculptors and painters will create something that's inspired by a piece of music, and then musicians will look at that artwork that was created and they'll create music based on the inspiration from those art pieces, and the whole thing just keeps going and going and going. It's really cool.
I think if not for that project,
You got muted, Wes.
Is the Star Trek Enterprise about to crash?
yeah, we got the emergency alerts just hit. Sorry, I decided to spare you. Anyway, if not for that project, I would not have a song in my catalog inspired by a homemade baked good.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the baked good one?
Well, I got the first round of them, and I took notes when I ate it because I knew I wasn't going to get right to the song. And then 9 months later, I had my notes from eating this moon pie, and I was really glad I had them. I wrote the tune.
I'm just sharing the link to the song I wrote for a painting at for that project called My Marie.
Sweet.
Another thing we've been doing is a friend of ours has been sending us songs, and we've been going into the studio and doing backup vocals for him. So that's been, which is something that we haven't done before, sending tracks back and forth. You know, so communication with other people, yeah, that's been good.
And I'm doing a radio release of my CD for my band Cowgirl Stream.
Cool.
Lots of research, contact with DJs.
I have a question, and I haven't been able to get a clear answer on this yet, but you know, we see these presentations where, you know, big choruses of people are singing together, you know, in isolated screens, and bands are playing together in these isolated screens. And I keep asking, is this a piece? And then I say, how are people doing this? And they go, well, we tried it by Zoom, but the latency is killing us. And so if you know of any of this stuff, let me know. And then other people are saying, people are just recording individual tracks and basically it's getting post-production mixed into one screen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's happening. I mean, have you seen that happen live? I'm not sure how you could really accomplish a live performance in that sort of way, because, you know, even if you have a super fast internet connection, just the processing speed alone is going to kill you. You know, I mean, we do musical theater at the college that I work at every summer, and one of the big things, so we have a pit where there's a full orchestra down in the pit, and the conductor wants to see what's happening on stage and, you know, keep time and stuff like that. And honestly, even just the latency between a video camera and an HD screen just kills it. You know, that 20th of a second, I just don't see it as being possible, to be honest with you. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think it is all post-production stuff going on.
That's cool.
There's an app called Acapella. Has anyone played with that yet? It's called Acapella. It's Deb, and I just lost my screen here. Whoops. But can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I can't see you guys either because my phone did something weird. There's an app, Country Dave Harbinson is using it a lot these days. It's called Acapella, like Acapella, and you can like you video yourself doing a part, and then you can video yourself again playing with yourself, playing along. It's like a 4-track on a recorder on your phone, but it uses camera, or you can collaborate with someone. Like I could record a part, which I'm planning on doing, and send it over to Dave or tell him to log onto his Acapella account, and he could record like a slide guitar part to it, and it would be in sync because he's playing to me. But I'm really I haven't used it yet, but I'm intrigued by it, and I've been seeing some really neat stuff that people are doing with that to do things with their bandmates.
I think if I can jump in there really quick, that is a really great solution for just a couple of people, Deb.
Yeah, like 3, 4. You can do like 4, but yeah.
Right. And so when I have done research about large groups, that what I have discovered, and from people who've produced the videos, is one way to do it is to send out one version of a recording. So have the accompanist record it. everyone listens to the recording and sings along with the recording so that they stay generally within the time of the one guided recording. And then they send their individual files. And as Poco mentioned, they are edited together, which is a little bit of a laborious process because the rendering of those many audio and video files into one cohesive file that can then be uploaded and shared on social media is the part that's really cumbersome. So I would be really interested to hear if anyone discovers, you know, or maybe it's the time for web developers and app developers to come up with the solution for us to all call in to one place and sing, you know, some holiday tunes together, or to just, you know, sing together live and lift each other up that way. I'm looking out for that next solution.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some kind of cheater workaround ways, and one of them could be, you know, sending out a click track file, so at least everyone's on the same timing, and then having a computer put it all together based on the click track. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's not the same as having two musicians soloing back and forth live. And, you know, I mean, again, like I said, I got into the business for my love of live music and the special interaction. And obviously we're in a time right now where we've got to, you know, find some way to kind of bridge that gap, but I wouldn't, you know, go too far down the road of thinking that these virtual live music sessions are a real long-term solution to what people really want in terms of live music.
We shall get through it. We shall.
But again, that's one of the things where, you know, any kind of difficult time it breeds some kind of creativity. And I think that, you know, certainly there's, you know, app developers, web developers that are scrambling around, you know, trying to put some platforms out there for people to buy, to use and buy, because so many musicians are, you know, really asking for it. So it's interesting to see what will pop up, you know. I think the tech world will respond to everything that musicians are going through right now. It's going to be very, very interesting.
I would say if you're going to invest in gear and software right now, universal audio is the way to go, because they are not going away. They are an industry standard. They aren't cheap, but, you know, if you're talking about this as a career, there's no reason to cheap out either. So universal audio, highly recommended.
That's good to know.
We still have one booking left, outdoor concert that hasn't canceled, and I don't know how the three of us are going to distance 6 feet apart, but it's nice to know there's some hope out there.
You don't have to be successful.
I was going to ask, actually, I was curious if who still has bookings that have not yet been canceled and how far out there they are.
This is in July.
July? In this year, I assume.
Skyview, North Bend.
An outdoor concert.
Parks.
Well,
all I have is a private house concert in Albuquerque, but I'm not holding my hopes up, although it's my cousin's. We might just move that around or do something different, but it hasn't been officially canceled yet. So we'll see. And of course I'd drive, I wouldn't want to fly, but everything else went poof.
You know, I think
is universal audio software, or is that hardware? Or?
Both. They make hardware and software. So they make software and then they make hardware to plug into the software.
So do they have a specific genre that they I mean, it's odd. Is it just are they like the Shure microphone company, or
is it a brand? Is it a brand or a company that sells stuff, Poco?
It's a company. They're actually based in Scotts Valley, which is right near where I live, but they are quickly becoming like Shure, whereas they are the industry standard. They're teaching most college level classes these days in audio are using their equipment.
Are you saying as a mixing board or as outboard equipment or as microphones, or for what purpose?
It's mostly for post-production mixing.
So software.
It's software, but they have a hardware interface that goes along with it.
Oh.
And would you find them at universalaudio.com?
I believe so, yeah. You know, I am not an audio person by trade. I'm dangerous enough in audio to, you know, mix a salsa band, but I have not taken any formal classes, so unfortunately I can't tell you all the hardware specifics to it.
It sounds like Pro Tools.
Yes. It is very much like, and you can use Universal Audio equipment with Pro Tools.
Thank you for that
Thanks.
tip off. I'm gonna look it up.
Are any of you using OBS?
Not yet, but I'm on my way. I'm planning on it. I'll keep you posted.
What is OBS?
What is it? It's
Online broadcasting software. That's not it. The B is for broadcast.
So Mary, Universal Audio is at uaudio.com.
right.
But OBS is streaming software.
Yes.
Okay.
Open broadcast something systems.
Open broadcast software.
Software.
Open source software for video recording and live streaming.
Right.
It streams to Twitch, which is a whole other new thing, right? I finally got my YouTube channel fixed up, and now there's something called Twitch, which is a whole other broadcast service that I've been going to some Zoom meetings, and they're broadcasting on Twitch. It seems like it's more for a younger, maybe.
Well,
No. You can use OBS.
I would recommend check out. Is it Jim Henry? Clecia is a big fan of this guy. I don't know if you've heard her talk about him, Poco, but I think it's Jim Henry. I'll look it up and put it in the notes there. And he has excellent audio on his live streams, and the guitar sounds beautiful. And he switches to a second camera, and I think, and so it's all through this OBS platform. Which when I just looked at it real briefly, and it looked like it looked like a Pro Tools type of thing. You know, you've got it all on screen, and I believe he's mixing 2 microphones and he's mixing 2 cameras. So as he's playing, I think he must have a foot switch or something, and he switches to a camera that shows his fingers on the guitar. It's really cool, and then he switches back when he starts singing, and it sounds great and looks really good. And I believe his platform is this OBS, and I'm hearing a lot more talk about this OBS all of a sudden, but I really don't know anything about it. And I've asked in a couple of groups, is this something where you're just going to be tearing your hair out? Do you have to be a real techie to get into it? And I'm getting messages that, you know, people that are not that technically inclined can certainly jump in without a lot of difficulty. But, you know, it's a big program. There's a lot you can do on it. And so, you know, once you dive in, you might go down that rabbit hole for a while. But I'm seeing a whole lot of chatter about this OBS all of a sudden.
Well, Alicia Healy at Winter Blue Room uses OBS to do Facebook live streams. It's not Twitch dependent. And that's how you can switch between 2 cameras, have control of your different sound levels. So I'm curious about it for my setup.
Yeah, I think it's free, right? It's open source.
Yeah, it's open source software.
So you've got to want to jump in there. But, you know, we're here to learn.
Well, I'm actually having kind of fun doing all this stuff because it's stuff I had been collecting audiovisual stuff for several years, and then more recently, a few months, I bought a green screen drop before the pandemic hit, thinking at some point I'll have time to sit around and learn how to green screen. Well, guess what? The time is now. So I've been able, but like Wes, I hear you when you say you were behind gear. I had to update some of my gear that I hadn't bothered before because I just had Alicia do everything. So I hear you.
People are starting to duck out, and maybe it is time for wrapping up. But what I want to say is that for all of you who are feeling a little dispirited right now, you know, you got to just take this a day at a time. Nobody knows what it's going to look like when we come out of it. Christy, you're not going to disappear. And, you know, you're not going
Wes,
to.
you're not irrelevant.
And you just got to, you know, it's just, you know, we never have had, you didn't get into music because you thought there was a clear path and a steady paycheck. There never has been. There never has been. Your decision to go into this is fraught with uncertainty. It always has been, and it always will be. And you take it as it comes, and you build what you can build, and you hang in there and you do it, because you can't really live without doing it, because that's who you are. So things are going to change. It's a little uncomfortable now. Maybe it's a lot uncomfortable, but you got to just take a breath and cling to that faith that there will be a time where you can come out of this and play in front of live audiences again, and you will. And, you know, just try not to spin yourself out into the future too much, because the answer isn't there. We don't know what those answers are going to be, but we're going to come through it, and everybody will be fine, and no one's going to get lost. You're just going to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and figure out what the next step is. So please try to stay out of that cycle down there. And if you do find yourself in that cycle down there, you have to develop your strategies for keeping yourself up out of that. And this isn't the first time things have crashed and burned for you. So
how did you know that?
We're human.
She is a very wise woman. She is, that Mary Mc Faul.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Mary. I mean, all I would say is I think people are going to come out of this hungrier than ever for live music, you know. And, you know, my suggestion to people in this time is just, you know, feed your audience as much as you can to keep them interested and so that they're ready to bite when it's finally time to come out of this thing. And also, one thing you said earlier, Mary, about, you know, just being creative with your approach and stuff, got me to think about, you know, one of the things that I think that musicians can really do to help cultivate their audience a little bit more is, you know, try to partner with other artists who maybe are a little bit more dissimilar than yourselves. You know, there's such the trap of finding a similar artist to partner with or co-bill, you know, two typical folk musicians. But I think there's actually much more strength in partnering with a type of artist that's very dissimilar to yourself and attracting a different sort of audience and bridging that gap between two. So, you know, just maybe think from a different perspective about other artists out there that aren't quite the same as you and how you could build a following with each other on top of your strengths.
Agreed. You know, revel in some new learning, you know, that can help you, you know, stay out of the doldrums. And, you know, making those coalitions with other musicians and really think outside the box about something, you know, and you know, maybe it's something that is a total fail. Okay, crash and burn, you know, you learn from every one of them. Just throw yourself out there and see what you can learn and what you can build. You know, it's a perfect time to be doing it. You know, and then when things open up again, you're going to have a few more tools in your toolbox than when all this stopped.
Yeah, I'm losing tools from my toolbox right now.
Thanks for bringing us together. I'm going to sign off and really appreciate meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing your expertise and for getting together. And I put a link in the comments, but we'll send it in a follow-up email, how you can join us for the next one if you want to get together again. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Stay well.